Hello, everyone, and welcome to our amazing live session. Today, we're going to talk about teaching academic English and working with scientists and academics of different kinds as a teaching niche. And our guest today is Julia Klann. This is me, Polina Winglovsky, your regular host. Thank you for joining us today. As always, if you have any questions throughout this conversation, feel free to drop them in the comments and we'll be happy to address them in this conversation. Also, you can watch the recording of this session on our YouTube channel and on LinkedIn. But sometimes on LinkedIn it doesn't work, so you can always find it on our YouTube channel, amazy.uk. Just search that on YouTube and you'll find it. Before we begin, let me say a few words about what amazy.uk is if you're new here and if you haven't heard about it before. Amazy is an online workspace for teachers where you can create original, interactive, customizable materials, share them with other teachers, and browse through thousands of ready-to-use materials already created by our users. You can share these materials with your students, and there are a lot of great features like 16 interactive tools and also an AI assistant that can help you create original materials, design some example sentences, texts, and other things. So check it out. You can scan the QR code in the top left corner for amazy.uk or simply type it in the browser, amazy.uk. It's a great tool for teaching and for all educators. Now, let me tell you a little bit about our today's guest. Julia Klann is an academic English trainer with master's degrees in modern languages and literature from Oxford and Harvard University. And she also helps academics to communicate confidently in English, work internationally, and build productive writing and language learning routines. Julia offers workshops, courses, and one-on-one training. So let's welcome Julia here. Hi!
Hello, how are you?
I'm great. How are you doing?
I'm very well, thank you. I'm very excited about this chat actually
Thank you for
today. So
coming.
I've been looking forward to this for a while. Of
I
course,
have
no
a lot of
worries.
questions to you, and we are going to discuss many different things. And I also hope that the
Great.
audience will also have some questions. So, of course, the first question we're going to ask is to the audience. So, if you are watching us right now, as we are speaking, not in recording, please write in the comments if you've ever worked with academic English and what challenges you faced, if you had any. In general, you can just share your experience with academic English and what interests you in it. If you have questions to Julia, also write them in the comments. One
Please
more time,
do.
thank you for joining. Okay,
Of
so
course.
Julia, can you tell me first, how did you get into teaching academic English? How did this work? And also, of course, with your background in both Harvard and Oxford universities, I think that probably kind of worked for you, but can you just elaborate on that a little bit, how that happened?
Yeah, I've always loved teaching. I was originally trained as a teacher in Germany before I went
Mhm.
and did all my shenanigans in different countries. And I really enjoyed studying 2 master's degrees, which I think some people would be like, "What? Why would you do that?" But I think I'm a nerd at heart. I love the idea of science, of research, of like, curious minds that are exploring things, that are questioning things. So I wanted to go back to teaching after I did my master's degree at Harvard. And I started at Ruhr University in Bochum, which in Germany, which was very nice, very lovely colleagues. And then after a while, I did regular group courses, and then I was approached by my supervisor to do a
Mhm.
one-on-one training for a
Mhm.
professor. And I said, sure, that sounds amazing. Let's do
Okay.
it. And then when I had this first client, I think we got to talking. What are your issues right now? What are you like? How come you approach me right now with wanting to improve your English? And it turned out that after you finish your master's degree and when you're not officially a
Yeah.
student anymore, there didn't seem to be a lot of options for people to actually work on their English skills if you work in a university context. Like if you are a PhD student, a postdoc, a researcher, a
Yeah.
professor, like especially those like maybe that's one of the things actually I found as well. Like, people in their 50s and 60s, they might not have had the chance to actually have a lot of English, in high school or
Mhm.
afterwards. So that was like the first encounter that I had, and I was like, I'm wondering whether there's more people like this. I really enjoyed working
Mhm.
with her. How it all started. And so I just kind of had more one-on-one clients, and I really enjoyed working with them. And now here I
Okay, so
am.
you didn't pursue it per se. Pursue per se, whoa. But the opportunity presented
Yeah.
itself to you, and this, it just happened naturally and gradually that you got into it.
Yeah. Yeah, I think so. I did pursue English teaching. Like I really wanted to. I really enjoy the language. Obviously, I studied it for
Yeah.
many, many years. So that I did pursue on purpose. I think this niche developed
Okay.
organically.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, how did it go with this very first professor that you worked with? Was it hard for you to understand how to approach the, the program, how to identify the problems that this person had, or it was
I
easy and
wouldn't
natural
say,
and it just clicked?
yeah, I think it just clicked. I think the most, in any case, like if you do one-on-one training with anything, whether this is languages or you do like,
Yeah.
business coaching or something, I would say the most important thing is to listen, like to actually like what's going on right now for the client, what are the issues, what are, the pressing problems. And then I think at this point though, the issue for me was that I didn't have a lot of
Yeah.
material for academic English and for like specifically at this level and for her area. So I was doing lots of prep, which I enjoyed, but that might have been like the initial, um,
The initial
yeah, I guess
struggle, which,
challenge maybe
yeah.
for me. But
Okay.
yeah, but I did really enjoy it. And I think, yeah, I think the most important thing there was just for me to really listen to what she
Hmm.
needed.
Okay, okay. We will talk
Yeah.
about materials a little bit later. Now, let's take a look at some of the answers that our
Yeah.
audience has shared. So, hello, Asal. Thank you for joining us. And I will have to read it, I think. One big challenge is helping students understand that academic English isn't just about big words, it's about clarity, structure, and formal tone. Some students struggles with this shift from everyday language.
100%. Yes. This whole idea of switching between registers, and especially, for example, when you go to a conference and you have to go from giving a professional academic presentation and then navigating the Q&A sessions, and then you go have a, glass of champagne in the corner and talk about someone's holiday house. Like that's asking a lot in terms of language and communication skills and intercultural
Mhm.
skills. So yes, Asal, 100%. I really, yeah, I agree
Um,
with you.
so, how many years have you worked with academic English and with teaching academic English? It's been
Four
four
to
to five
five
years.
years,
Could you
roughly.
say that there has been any kind of change in regards to, because this is what I'm saying in many other areas, is that we are seeing, especially with business correspondence and like writing emails and things are
Mm.
getting more laid back recently, is what I'm saying in many niches. Like people are becoming more relaxed with the way they talk.
Mhm.
And I think we are now pursuing more clarity and comprehension rather than coming across as, I don't know, super professional or sophisticated. Is there the same thing happening with academic English?
That's a good question. Well, so I mostly work with people in
Hmm.
Germany, and we do have, I think more so maybe than in the UK, Australia, or the United States, like we still have this. So we have two different ways of addressing people. We have a formal way and an
Hmm.
informal way. And of course, that's still we still do that. That's still, I think, done in any professional context. And then especially when you go to the university context, you still have professor, doctor, blah blah. Like you still address people
Hmm.
with that. So I think maybe that might just be a bit of an exception, just that Germany has these different levels. Mm,
Let me maybe
yeah.
rephrase what I mean here. You mentioned the tone, and you also mentioned, that you have to switch between registers when you give a presentation
Mhm.
and when you do the Q&A session, and then afterwards you talk about, a holiday with a glass of champagne. That's, you have to
Yeah.
switch between different registers. So what I've been seeing with like business English, for example, is that because we're becoming more globally aware of different, of people speaking different versions of the language, I see the shift to
Mhm.
becoming more not simplified specifically, but comprehensible to the majority of people. Is this may not be the
Mhm.
case with academic English that I'm saying, but even with when you give a presentation, you would use maybe more common words than more.
Yeah, I think it probably depends on the audience. I think especially in academic conferences, you are expected to use certain
Mhm.
jargon words, and that's partly what like I do too with my clients. Like we make sure that the words that they use to talk about their research do actually mean what they want them to mean, and it doesn't have any kind of connotations that they
Yeah.
want to avoid. So I think probably, yeah, I think research presentations would be, at least if you talk from peer to peer, in that those kind of contexts, I think that would, as far as I can tell, in my impression, that I don't think that has kind of simplified over the
Okay.
last years. Maybe if you do networking
Hmm.
after, maybe it's easier or faster to switch to a first
Hmm.
name basis. That's kind of what I just was talking about before, like when someone is Professor Doctor something. I think it's got more common for people to just say, "Hi, I'm Julia," and
Okay.
that's it. Like you just go straight to that. I think that, yeah, I think that's probably, yeah, I would probably second
Okay.
that.
Okay. Okay, good to know. But then when we talk about academic writing, so research papers, proposals, those kind of things, the rules are rigid, the structures are strict, and you have to follow it word for word or.
Yeah, I think, I mean, what Asal said before, like I'm a big, oh my gosh, this is one of my pet peeves, like for people to stick, to want to use all these complicated, like lots of passive constructions and lots of like big, like nouns everywhere. Like the Helen Smith coined this term, like zombie
Mhm,
nouns, like they walk through the sentence and they don't do
mhm,
anything. It's just like dead
mhm.
words. So yeah, I do like clarity is the most important thing. Like if people can't understand what you're writing, it doesn't like no none of the jargon that you use will help you.
That's the thing I
So
have had with academic English in my personal experience, because and what I've seen a lot of people say is that sometimes it feels that it is purposefully not misleading but confusing. You know,
yeah. Oh, sorry.
no,
Go
no,
ahead,
no.
Julia. I didn't want
That
to
was my point. It
interrupt.
is purposefully confusing, and it has been because for years, academic writing has separated itself, distanced itself from everything else. And it was a way, like, if you can understand the way I write, then it's sort of a test for you to join the club. And if you can't understand, and if it's too hard for you to read the way I write, then, well, you're too stupid and it's not for you. You know what I mean? It's like an
Hmm.
elite sort of like
Oh,
club and a rite of passage to speak this way, to write this way, and to understand what is written. So these things are still there and not
yeah.
changing.
Well, you're actually like we're touching on something now that I'm really
Okay.
passionate about because like I had the privilege and the honor, like I did study at Oxford and Harvard, which are, Ivy Leagues, like really excellent universities, which have sometimes this reputation of like, this ivory tower. And as you just said, like, exclusive, not everyone is admitted, not everyone can study there, this privilege. And like, if you don't get it, you're
Yeah.
not smart enough. And I do think that this is actually the sweet spot, like this balance to, to, to reach this point of balance so that you still use all the keywords, within your research field and all the jargon and all the things to write concisely because that's partly what
Hmm.
jargon is. why we have that, but also make things accessible. Like there is no point, like why do you do research if you don't make it accessible, if you don't want to communicate it to others? I think that's um yeah, I think that's that would actually like be this whole ivory tower. Like I'm doing my research, I'm sitting in my little room, keeping it all to myself. I'm meeting like with 5 other
Right.
academic friends, and then that's it. I think that's
Right.
not,
It's not about patting
especially
each
now,
other
like
on the
there's
head and
lots of
saying,
talk
"Oh,
about
you've done a
funding.
great job." And
You're so smart. Yeah,
yes. Okay. Okay.
exactly.
Let's also
Yeah.
see. We have a few more questions. So one is, how do you assess the students after session?
Ooh,
Do you?
oh, oh. Hmm. Yeah, well, that's how do I assess? Well, I just assume that we talk about one-on-one students that I work with. I wouldn't say I assess them after the session. Like they're all, they're all professionals. I respect them as academics. I respect them as, um, fellow grown-ups. And it's not like I don't do EAP course, like English for academic purposes. It's not about like being admitted somewhere. We don't have any exam to that we, have lined up in 4 weeks' time. I think in terms of assessment, we do start with a self-assessment and we set goals
Mhm.
individually. Like, what are your goals for the next 3 months that we work together? We break them down, and then we have sentences like, um, I feel comfortable with my
Okay.
pronunciation. And when we start working together, maybe that's a 3 out of 10. And then every now and then we go back to those goals and to those statements and see, like, where do you see
So
yourself
it's about
now?
self-assessment.
But yeah, assessment is not. Yeah, I think a lot of it. Well, yeah, and then I think obviously if you have concrete situations that we practice for, like giving a presentation, presenting something at a department meeting, then that's gonna be the assessment. Like that's the real
Mhm.
life assessment. But yeah, I'm not. That's not really my
Yeah.
role, I think, to assess
Yeah.
someone.
I think what they
Yeah.
probably meant in the sense that how do you assess retention and like if they have understood all the material, if it consolidated.
Yeah. I always, or most of the time, we start a session like I ask. So we meet often with one-on-one students. We meet every
Hmm.
2 weeks, which gives them enough time between sessions to work on whatever we, you know, decide on together, what would be good things for them to
Hmm.
do. And then I often just ask, what did you manage to cover? What was the most helpful activity you did
Hmm.
this week? What was most challenging for you? What did you find most rewarding? And I think that's kind of, I guess, an assessment of progress,
Yeah,
maybe.
yeah, but it all falls into self-assessment sort of category. So, yeah, yeah, but
Mhm,
nothing
mhm.
formalized, nothing like that.
No, I think especially if you do work, like I think this is all very like we're focused on communicative situations, and this is all part of like a professional context. So it's like I think the assessment kind of doesn't apply as much as like as far as I would,
Okay. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
see that.
Compared to when you prepare for writing, when you train academic writing, when you propose, and that there you will obviously be able to read what they've written and assess it this way, of course. Um,
Yeah.
One more question from Asal. I want to know how you guide students from casual language to formal academic style without hurting their confidence. What I usually do is introduce small changes gradually, like replacing informal words with academic ones. So they um, so they build confidence step by step.
Very, yeah, very amazing. I'm very happy. Like so many questions today. Fantastic. So I think without hurting their confidence is generally very valid concern because I mean, at least for me, but I'm sure like many of the people who watch and who also teach us, like that's an issue. Like just to take that step and to say, hey, I want to work on something that I feel really uncomfortable with. That's a huge. courageous step
Okay.
to take. So I think that's really
I
valid.
think I think it's very similar
Um,
to working with
oh,
any
sorry.
kind of adult or a professional in general, because it takes a certain courage to admit to your vulnerability when you are an esteemed professional or I don't know, an academic, and you are praised for your knowledge and your expertise, and then all of a sudden you do not know something and you have to come to a person to rectify it, to learn
Yeah.
what you don't know and to admit that, oh, I don't know it, I don't understand it. Can you help me? That takes a lot of courage.
Yeah, that's a huge thing. Like, especially as you just basically said, Paulina, like, especially, for people who've kind of established themselves, they've built a career, they have a certain reputation, also maybe in their
Yeah.
department and the university. And then, yeah, to admit, like, oh my gosh, like I can't actually talk about my research the way I want to in English
Yeah.
is an important thing, but it's a vulnerable
Mm.
thing, yeah. But to get back to the question, so without hurting their confidence, how I got, I think it's probably a mixture of input and output. So Azal, you talk about introducing small changes, replacing words. So that sounds like, you're working with the students in the session live, you have different exercises. Um, I did a worksheet where I had like different example sentences and I just had the client give me like an estimate, like what do you think? Like does this sound more informal to you, more
Hmm.
formal? And I also gave context, like I gave sentences before and after the
Hmm.
phrase. Um, to, we can work with different podcasts, like just kind of have like resources, material that they can expose
Hmm.
themselves to that gives them different registers. I think
Hmm.
that's one of
Yeah.
the things.
So we have a
Yeah.
few more questions, but before we do that, since we have touched upon materials, I think this is the question I was looking forward to. So, I mean, I'm the host of this live. I can ask any question I want in any order.
Sure. Yeah. Go
So,
ahead.
can you tell me where do you get the lesson materials? Because I assume, like from what I think, there has to be a lot of designing, course design, tailor making these materials. There isn't like a book you can take, a course book that says English for academics and how to write research papers, proposals, do Q&A sessions and whatnot.
Yeah. Yeah. It's yeah, very good question. And there is so how do I do? There is all kinds of so there is lots out there in terms of academic writing. So that's one box. There is amazing. Well, some books are very amazing. Some books which are talking about clarity and brevity, and then they're very long, and you're like, well, hmm. I remember one book which was like more than 300 pages, and one of the main things they talked about in the introduction was to be short and
Oh,
precise. And I was like, hmm,
that
I wonder
defies the purpose.
who edited. Yeah. So there's lots out there on academic writing. There's lots, I think, general material, what you kind of just touched upon, I think, Paulina, topic sentences, how to write paper abstracts, those kind of things. There's lots of EAP material
Mhm.
out there. I think those things sometimes are covered in English for academic purposes courses. But then when it comes to authentic situations like the Q&A sessions, like navigating networking events, developing an elevator pitch for your research, like those things need to you need to work on this individually with the client because like the research field is different, the topics are different, the keywords are different. Yeah, so it's a mixture. It's tailor made. There's some material out there. Obviously, like if someone wants to cover grammar issues, like I have everyone probably has their like favorite grammar resources.
Yeah,
Yeah.
okay. Okay. So it's bits and pieces, mix and match. And then a lot of it is creating things. Do you use, by the way, do you use AI these days for creating like sentences, examples, situations, drafting ideas?
I do use AI. I think even if I was opposed to it, though, I think just because everyone does use it and my students and my clients use it, I would have like this obligation just to have a look at it and check it out. But yeah, I do use it, but I think it's more to kind of soundboard things, like to, you know, if I wanted to do this in a session, what would you do? Like that's what I would
Okay.
ask the, ChatGPT, and then to get some ideas, and then yeah, so it's more kind of bouncing things off. Um, in a yeah, I don't I do develop the material myself, but sometimes yeah, getting like I think like generating ideas, getting feedback,
Okay.
yeah,
Because I think
or maybe like a
it can
colleague.
be very well versed um, in different registers and in transitioning from one register to. I think this is one thing that language models like ChatGPT are very good at, are specifically designed for even
Hmm.
maybe because um, they're trained on the research papers as well, and so they have all this in the database.
Yeah.
So basically, getting examples, getting sentences, getting, or for example, analyzing. Here are five sentences. Which ones are not of, not formal enough? For example, it can give all of that information as well. Okay.
Yeah, I did do that recently. Like I developed like this kind of worksheet I just was talking about. Um, but you definitely, and this is probably like all of us teachers, that's what we keep telling our students, like we have to double check things. Like there were some expressions in there that I never heard before, and then I was like, well, I don't know everything. Maybe I've just never heard of them, and then I looked them up, and they literally didn't
Yes.
exist. So, and then some context, I added some things around it to make it clearer, like what the context was. So that's you do need to kind of
Hmm.
work with it. Yeah.
Okay. Let's take a look at another question then from Emma. What do you think is the biggest challenge students face when trying to write or speak in academic English? Vocabulary structure or confidence?
Hmm. That's a really good question because all three of those things are really important. Biggest challenge. Probably confidence, I think. At least in my experience. Obviously, I'm not, speaking for everyone here, but in my experience, just yeah, I think this is kind of what we talked about before. Like when someone, and you're an expert for whatever you're doing your research on, you're doing a PhD thesis on something, you're teaching university level courses. Um, yeah, I think that's a big thing. Like lots of clients come to me and they say like, I just don't speak up in department meetings. I feel really embarrassed about my English. I don't like the way I sound. I'm struggling to find the right words. But then we're touching on the vocabulary again. So yeah. And then the structure, obviously, like I think I lovingly say that I give people like kicks in the
Mhm.
butt via WhatsApp. If people want to, like I also,
Consensually.
we're in touch on WhatsApp. Yeah, yeah, exactly. So I did actually yesterday I had a session with a client. And I did ask her, I said, like, how stressed are you right now? Are you okay for me to give you a kick in the butt tomorrow? And then she's like, yeah, that's fine.
So, what
So
are the kicks for?
yeah.
To do what?
Yeah. So in this case, it was what we do if people are interested is I give them different
Hmm.
speaking prompts. It could be related to their research, could just be like talking about their day. It could be talking about a podcast they listen to, like kind of in-depth questions, like what was what like one surprising thing you heard in the podcast. Really kind of short prompts, and then I ask them to send me a 2-minute voice
Okay.
message.
Okay.
just to kind of overcome this inner
Yeah.
resistance to
Yeah. Yeah.
speaking. And there is research like the self, like we have this, self-monitoring process in our brain. Like as soon as we say something, our brain starts to monitor that and to
Yeah.
give feedback and to say, does it sound right? And that tends to be more effective when we actually say it out loud.
Yeah.
So hence the
I
voice
love doing
messages.
the same thing,
Yeah.
but on Amazy because there we have the voice recorder tool, and often for homework I will write like 5 questions and I say choose at least one and record your answer to me. And what I
Yeah.
like about Amazy is like it can be really hard on WhatsApp because you can't pause. You have to record it in one go,
Hmm.
which is good maybe for training,
Yeah.
but sometimes if you because this is all new and for my students it used to be like the thing that broke it for them that like they didn't want to do it just because it had to be in one go. On Amazy you can click
Ah,
pause, catch your breath, collect your thoughts, then click record and keep recording, and
yeah.
then when you're done you hit stop. So
Yeah. That sounds fantastic. I did, obviously I looked up Maisie now, like when you reached out and such. And I did actually think that that was a fantastic function to work with that. Yeah, and I think the pausing thing, that's really important. Although I have to say, like some of my students, they have actually they told me that they did like
yeah,
several rounds of recordings and they listened to it again
yeah,
on their own account. Like I was actually not the one telling them to. And then they redid it. And the one client did this
hmm
4 times, and he said at the end he felt much more comfortable and confident with,
yeah.
what he sent me. And he said like he learned so much during the process. So
Yeah, but you can do the same in Amaze too. Like
that's
my students have done that as well. Like
yeah.
I sometimes I listen to a recording and it's spot on. And I asked myself, did you read it out loud? And she said, no, it was just my
Mhm.
fifth recording of this thing. And I'm like, oh, okay, okay. You got it.
Yeah, but that's okay. Like it's if people, I once who did I speak to recently? I spoke to someone and they said they had a student who did the same thing, and then the student kind of admitted, "Oh yeah, I cheated. Like I actually it was my fifth try." And and then this person I spoke to, she was like, "No, you actually studied really hard and you went through all these,
Yeah.
rounds and you got better, and that's not cheating. Like
Saying.
you put in the effort."
But maybe it
So
feels better if you say that you cheated and you learned. So, you trick your brain into thinking that you were cheating when you were actually learning.
yeah, I should, maybe I should just brand
Yeah,
it that
yeah,
way, like
because
the cheat Julia's cheat
it
code.
feels easier for you to do it this way if you trick your brain. Like, when you like when you need to study for exams, but you're like, no, I'm gonna write cheats, little notes of all that. When as you're taking notes, you're
Mhm.
actually learning and remembering things. You're actually studying for the exam, but you're creating little cheats that you're never gonna use. So it's about tricking yourself. Okay, we're sort of running out of time, so I have
Uh,
to speed us up a bit. We have one more question from the audience and then a few more things. How do you help your learners use AI? And we actually have one more similar. How do you think using AI will be more effective in teaching English as a second language? So, do you help your students with AI? It did feel that you were a little bit cautious talking about AI, like you don't really use it that much, it seems.
I do use it. I'm just, um I think I've just seen and heard of many cases where people just don't they just copy and
Yeah.
paste it. Also, like when I taught university courses, we've had a few incidents where whole papers were just copied. And yeah, that's
No, we are
I
at a
felt.
stage, and this is a conversation I
Yeah.
had a few last week or a few weeks ago when we talked about, AI and how to be ecological about it. We're just playing with it. It's a whole new thing, and we still don't have any healthy boundaries there yet. We're just setting them. So these things will happen, but they will teach us of what things can be done and what things can be done. It's like when kids test boundaries when they learn of personal space, and they will come and grab your thing, or they will pinch you. We are at a very toddler stage with AI right now. We're learning.
Yeah.
We're learning.
Yeah, and AI is
Yeah,
learning with
yeah.
us.
Well,
So, it's kind of like
so do you? The first question: how do
um,
you help your students use
mhm.
AI? If you do.
So that hasn't been an issue much with like in the one-on-one context. I have to say, like no one has actually approached me and said like, "Hey, what can I do?" I do know that some people use it to translate papers. Like
Yeah.
they come to me and they say, "Hey, I translated this with,
Mm. Hmm.
DeepL or something." Yeah, so maybe that's a good example. So yeah, so in this case, I think what I did is I said, "That's a great step. Like, I'm really glad you're working on trying to get this article published in English." And I think what we did then is, I asked the person to give me some English articles that they actually enjoyed reading and where they enjoyed the style of the person writing it, of the author. And then we uploaded this to AI, and then we kind of asked ChatGPT to work out specific characteristics of the text of the articles that the client liked. Like what are some things that stand
Hmm.
out? What are some things that I can copy? And then we kind of developed some writing exercise, some stylistic
Okay.
exercises. So
That's a
that
very good
might
example. That's great advice. Yeah. Use it for analyzing the texts you like and for learning from them.
yeah. And I think maybe one of the main things I would probably say is like make sure that at least for me, I I want to make sure that I give AI the material that I wanted to analyze. So it doesn't just randomly draw from whatever, internet stuff is out there, but that I say, I want to work with this article, with this website, with this text, and this is your input. And this is what I want this is what I want you to do, and like very specific writing prompts. And I want to work on my writing style, those
Hmm.
kind of, yeah, things.
Okay. No, thank you. Um, we don't really have much time, but I asked you to recommend a few books to read, and here they are. So, can you just give me a few words of what they are for? So, how can they help our audience, and in what way?
Yeah, I do have way too many books in my
We
home
narrowed it
office anyway,
down
so
to
it's hard to
three.
pick. Exactly. Um, so Cal Newport is, I think I've read and bought every one of his books. He's absolutely fantastic. Deep work is probably his kind of main thing that he does. And I found this really helpful for me and for my clients, and I'm sure for everyone who's a knowledge worker. Because there are so many things that we have to do. There are so many distractions, especially now with social media, with like all these notifications popping up. We're so connected. Like, how can we actually make a time to focus on one thing for 2 hours at a time or longer? Yeah. So that's one of the
Mhm.
books that I found incredibly helpful. Conquer the Chaos. If people like, because you said like there might be lots of teachers watching, people who also run their own businesses. Not that I run $1 million business, but I do try to, make sure that I learn about best practices and how I can grow my business in a sustainable way. And I just found it really spoke to me. I really found, I really, like when I read it, I really thought I really understood. And I think you can read this at the very beginning, because the beginning is about like finding your audience, finding what you want to focus on. And then the next chapters kind of walk you through the process of growing it. So I think hopefully in 5 years, I can pick it up at chapter 5. Yeah. And then academic writing, 90 days, 90 ways is about academic writing, but it combines different things. So there is things about how to build a routine, a writing routine, different elements about this. There is mindset work, there is motivational
Mhm.
quotations, not the ones you put on your wall, but like proper
Yeah.
ones that actually hopefully get you out of a rut. There is there's different, humoristic approaches to keep to just
You actually showed
this
me that there was some
research
like
can be a
funny
bit boring.
comics in it.
Yeah, there is comics, there is cartoons, there is book recommendations, there's writing prompts. So it's a nice kind of
Mhm.
potpourri of different things I think that, in my impression, are relevant and important when you want to survive in academia.
Thank you. Okay. And before we finish, one final thing, because we've had so many things, like I had so many questions planned and we ran out of time and I could keep talking to you forever, I think. But if you are watching us right now or in recording and you want to reach out to Julia and hear more or ask some questions, here we have a QR code for her LinkedIn profile. And another thing is Julia has a newsletter. Can you tell us a little bit what you publish in the newsletter and what can be found there?
Sure. It's about academic English, surprise. So different input with regards to that. Obviously, like, different workshops, courses that I run. I want to do some free events in the next months as well, more of those. And also kind of what that we touched on now, like deep work, learning psychology, like how can we better structure our language learning routine, but maybe also our work days, so we get more done and we don't feel as like a headless
Yeah,
chicken
yeah.
as much.
Okay, so subscribe to Julia's newsletter, connect to her on LinkedIn. Thank you so much for coming here and sharing everything. It was such a joy to talk to you, and I've learned a lot. Okay, then I'll see you soon and talk to you soon on LinkedIn. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Paulina, for having me. It was
Bye
a real
bye.
pleasure. Bye.
Okay, and this concludes today's session. Thank you so much for coming. Thank you so much for watching. It was a great pleasure of having you. I will see you again soon, maybe next week, maybe a week after that. Keep an eye for the announcements of the next live session. If you want to become the guest of this live session, please send me a message on LinkedIn, Polina Węgłowska, and we can maybe organize that. Well, thank you so much for coming, and this is it.